The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Why did you write Capitalist Manifesto? Is that an antidote or maybe a solution to the problems that we're seeing today that Marx outlined but gave us just dangerous, dangerous prescriptions for?
Right, thank you. That's, like I said, I went to military school. I didn't go to snowflake school.
Yeah.
And we were raised to be strong men. And so this book here is a tiny book. My book, Capitalist Manifesto, is a thick book because this is one of the most influential books in world history, the Communist Manifesto. And what I do in Capitalist Manifesto is track the progress through all these years. Mm-hmm. Because what happened when I came back from Vietnam in 1973, I flew into Norton Air Force Base, and we're taxiing up. You know, there was no flags, no waving, no Johnny Welcome Home and all this stuff. The pilot of the Air Force plane says, "Ladies and gentlemen, as soon as you get in the terminal, get out of your uniforms. America has changed." Mm. So this is 1973. I get off. I get hit by eggs. I get spit on. All these hippies, you know, the Woodstock generation. My own classmates, I mean, not my classmates, but the same generation, are spitting on us.
Right, right.
And I'm going, holy mackerel. And so that was the change. And then in my book, Capitalist Manifesto, I write all the quotes throughout history that was warning us. And this guy was warning us back in 1848. One thing he warned us about in this book was that women were going to take over. He says, what's going to happen is, and that was, you know, our friend Ronald Tomas, you know, this, they always talk about how men's testosterone is coming down. Yeah. And men's wages are coming down. Mm. But women are coming up. Yeah. And he talks about Ronald talks about hypergamy, and the epiphany effect is that women are waking up that men aren't capable of taking care of them anymore.
Yeah, right.
Men are hopeless. So that's why we do very well at Rich Dad with a lot of young men coming up and all this stuff. They're seeking new answers. Yeah. And that's what else he predicted here. There was one more thing. He says, capitalism is power. It's a social power. He hated that.
It's a power struggle.
He hated it because if you're a capitalist, you had too much power.
Yeah, right.
So he went to take you down. He took you down by taking away your property. It's not abolition of all property. It's abolition of rich guys' property. Mm. And that's what these guys are doing. One more thing here. He defines what a communist is. A communist is not a socialist. A communist is a highly educated person like my poor dad. He says they're they're the best people on planet Earth, and today we call them the liberal elite. He calls it in this book. So in my new book, Capitalist Manifesto, I mean, people hated me before because in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I called my poor dad a poor dad, PhD with a poor dad. But in my new book, Capitalist Manifesto, I call him a Marxist. And the reason that is because most teachers have not read this book. And they do not know they harbor Marxist ideas.
Yeah, right.
And most teachers are more like Marx than us. Do you know what I mean? They're academics, they're smart guys. That's like guys like Jordan Peterson fight back and Thomas Sowell fight back. But most academics are Marxists to communists. Yeah. And so my book, Capitalist Manifesto, starts with an attack on the NEA, National Extortion Association, according to Forbes magazine. So Sarah and I have been preparing the company for what the Israelis call the Iron Dome, because we're going after socialist media in Silicon Valley.
These entrenched groups.
Yeah, and the teachers union.
Yeah.
So that's why I was laughing at somebody says, if this building has a drone strike, it wasn't an accident. So I'm glad you moved in next door, George.
I'm glad it's on camera. Yeah, we got that out on YouTube. You're talking about taking away private property. And when you were mentioning that, I was thinking that our first form of private property is our own body.
Yeah.
So we're living in a day and age where the government that's in charge right now in the United States is trying to mandate that you do things with your private property, your body, that you might not want to do.
Correct.
So when you see that on the news, when you see those headlines, do you look at that through the terms of Marx and the studying that you've been doing for Capitalist Manifesto?
Yeah, mandate means you lost your freedom.
Yeah.
That's all it means. And I'm not against Republican or Democrat. I don't, Black Lives Matter, they're Marxists. I respect them. At least they state that.
Yeah.
We're a free country. You want to be a Marxist? Good. You want to be Christian? Good. You want to be Jewish? Good. You want to be Muslim? Good. It's freedom. But mandate means no freedom. And that's totalitarianism.
Yeah.
That's what's frightening to me.
Yeah. And they're trying to, in my opinion, they're trying to take away the ultimate private property.
Correct.
Because if you can control that, then you can pretty much make an excuse
how about this?
to take away your house, to take away your 401k.
How about take away your brain?
Yeah, to take away your mind.
Wait. You know what Jordan Peterson says? This transsexual, whatever they call it, you got to change your gender pronouns.
Yeah, right.
Look, I don't care who you sleep with. I mean, do you care? I mean, I don't care.
Not in the slightest.
But what Jordan Peterson says, when they can control your words, they've controlled your brain.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
we cannot use what his, her anymore. So the postmodernist education, which is NEA, National Extortion Association, they want to control our vocabulary. That's censorship. But they got it not through our mouths, but through our brains.
Yeah.
So we're now afraid to speak out. We get deplatformed by whoever we're on.
Yeah.
That's totalitarianism.
Yeah, I think that's what should really, or be one of the many things that should make people wake up.
Correct.
Maybe the average CNN viewer, we'll say, or someone who hasn't just been paying attention, and rightfully so. People have lives. They've got to take their kids to soccer practice. They have a 9-to-5 job. They don't have time to really, put the effort into understanding all of this, all the things that, that we understand. But when they really kind of start to open their eyes and see, okay, well, something doesn't seem right. I'm being forced to do all of these things, taking away the private property. I'm being forced to use particular words. The way I try to open up people's eyes to an even greater extent is ask them. I say, go back throughout history and look at the groups that have been in favor of censorship. Because right now we've got a lot of groups in the United States that are in favor of censorship. Misinformation, we need to get rid of that on social media. And look throughout history, and how many times have they been the good guys? 0 times. 100% of the time, they have been the bad guys. So why should we expect that the people that are in favor of censorship today are somehow not the bad guys? And if you just kind of start looking at things just through that very simple lens, at least it would make the average Joe and Jane a little more skeptical to start asking some questions that I think need to be asked right now.
Right, and that's what he says in this book here. He says that a pure communist is a very highly educated person. But as Malcolm Gladwell says, it's not your education, it's the culture you come from. And most of the highly educated people today came from poor families. Because I don't know if you ever heard it, people say, I'm the first in my family to go to college. For many people, that became the badge of honor. Oh, we're poor people, but we're going to send our kids to college. So kids today have how many trillions of dollars out in student loan debt?
Yeah.
We wiped out a whole generation.
Yeah.
That's Marxism. And we don't ever teach anything about capitalism.
Yeah.
And so when you look at all that going on, and our most educated, they're like Marx. They're poor people who got highly educated. They're called academic elite.
Yeah.
The liberal left. That's why we're in trouble, because that's what they're doing to our kids.
Yeah. So we're talking about how the U.S. is becoming more and more divided and just kind of more insane by the day. And whenever I try to take it to its logical conclusion, unfortunately, I always come to one answer, and I don't like that answer, but it's war. And you're someone who is a veteran. You've been there, done that.
Twice.
And so do you see that as nothing is inevitable? Thank goodness. There are no certainties. There are only probabilities. But do you see us on that path, whether it's a civil war or maybe a war with China or something? I mean, do you think it can end any other way, or what do you think the probabilities are? Okay,
so let me step back just a few days, okay? Because when you and Snyder were talking, I had to get a dictionary out.
Yeah.
But what you were saying is playing out today. It's a Eurodollar system, yada, 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 yada. The European Union is crashing. So But it's you and Snyder. But this morning, the Wall Street Journal comes up and runs this thing about what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Austria, what's happening in Turkey, and all this stuff. We're on the verge of war.
Yeah.
And what was it, The Fourth Turning said?
Neil Howe wrote the book The Fourth Turning, where he is saying that we're at the end of a fourth turning right now. And I actually interviewed him, and I said, okay, Neil, we're at the end of a fourth turning. Every other fourth turning in American history has ended in war. Does that mean that, in the next probably 8 years here, that's kind of the timeline for the fourth turning ending, that we'll see a war in the United States? And he said, in a very sobering fashion, I can't predict that, but what I can tell you is that's the way it's ended every other time throughout American history.
And he said every time it was also marked by a weak leader. And in my opinion, if you guys are Democrats, that's your choice and all this, but I think Biden's the weakest leader we've ever had.
Yeah, and also...
It's a weak leader, then war.
Yeah, and also a loss of confidence in our institutions.
Look what happened in Afghanistan.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Holy mackerel!
Yeah,
that was the biggest. That was worse than what I went through in Vietnam.
Yeah, and I think it did. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. Correct. I think that if
look at the facts,
look at the institutions today that we have, whether it's the CDC or any of them out there, and I think the average American, regardless of their politics, has far less confidence in our institutions today than they had in 2019. Well, and it's only getting worse.
I cannot. Well, you have Biden and Kamala. And so I have a friend. When I went to Vietnam the second time, I was an aircraft carrier pilot, and my roommate became a lieutenant general. To become a general, you've got to be pretty sharp. I got kicked out as a lieutenant for disciplinary problems. But General Jack Bergman, I've been remaining the best of friends all these years, and he's now a U.S. congressman. And so I talked to him on the side. I said, what's happening? He says, what happened was that it was supposed to go, what's his name? Obama, Hillary. And this guy named Trump popped up. So it blew the liberal elites, the Clintons, out of the water.
Right.
So Trump pops up in the middle of this thing, so they had to take him down. So 2020, they took him down. So what I want to mention, he says, I have another friend, this my General Jack Bergman, Congressman Bergman. He says his friend inside the DIA, Defense Intelligence Organization, he says, watch who Kamala picks as vice president. Okay, so the plan is already in. And this could be taken down also, but the prospects are Biden was not going to make it through his terms. He's mentally challenged, he's weak. So Kamala steps in, and the rumor in the DIA is whoever she picks as vice president is the puppet master.
Yeah, right.
That's the person that really runs the show. So I'm not saying it's true. You heard it here on Rich Dad and Rebel Capitalist. We have no substantiated
or whatever
proof.
We're calling this show today.
we have a drone flying overhead right now.
Yeah.
But that's what my friends in D.C. are telling me. They said, watch this. Watch who President Kamala, a black woman, which, who's never been to the border.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be the border's wide open. And he says, watch who she picks as vice president. Okay. So everybody, you heard it on the Rich Dad Radio and George Rebel Capitalist Radio here.
Yeah.